This demonstration is meant for QRadar users to answer the question, well, can you show me an example of what's the value that the Cloud Pak for Security, for now I'm going to call that CP4S, what's the value that that brings to my QRadar, existing QRadar environment? And to do that, what we have set up here is that we have a intranet in which we have a Windows machine which is going to be the subject of the attack, and this is the email address that we're going to be attacking, and it sends its Windows logs with sysmon added into QRadar. Well, what you will have the advantage point to see is that you will see the entire attack that will happen here above the intranet, and the attack will start by me sending from this Gmail account. I'm going to be sending a piece of mail with a malicious attachment, and this Windows 10 machine is configured so its Outlook client is connected to the Office 365. So as soon as I send that malicious email, it's going to show up in the inbox of this particular individual. When he or she clicks on the actual attachment, a session is going to be established with the attacker's kind of a home base. And his home base is nothing more that he took an account in an ISP provider, particularly in Germany in this case. It's actually Contabo, you'll see that later. And he puts his tool in there. In this particular case, we're going to use Kali. And by opening just that Word document, his machine will be compromised and a session will be created where the attacker can start doing all the other nefarious things on it. Now, because QRadar receives the sysmon logs, it's going to be able to fire an offense that indicates that this machine has been compromised, because he will see sysmon is capable of seeing all those things, and all that is good. Then what we did is that the QRadar Resilient app, we actually configure the Send to Resilient button to, instead of sending it to a local instance of Resilient, we are sending that to CP4S. And in our case, we install the integration server, which is an optional component of CP4S that allows us to do very many good interactions with that Office 365, which you will see mentioned in the tool or labeled in the tool as Exchange Online, right? And so that's kind of the architecture that we are going to be using in here. So let's actually go ahead and execute the attack. So here in the intranet, we have the Windows machine that we're going to be compromising, that Jose at mutas9.com. And this is the Outlook client, and as you can see, its mailbox is completely empty. So let's go into the Gmail account and send that malicious email. So from Gmail, we put the email address of Jose's account, we put a subject, and this is not about the social engineering of the attack or anything like that. And we're going to be actually adding the malicious Word document with the PowerShell. It's actually obfuscated and the details are not really important here. And we're going to send it like so. And sure enough, we see that piece of email with that attachment. I already took it out. It's right here. And here is the Kali machine with that provider in Germany. And up to this point, QRadar doesn't see anything. But when I open this Word document. And again, I'm not doing any about the social engineering of any of these. I'm not going to activate my license. I'm going to close this in here. What we see is that a session, and you just saw that session coming in here, has been established. And that's the beachhead, and I'm not going to go into more details of all the videos that where we have shown all that. But now, because this Windows machine has the Windows log with the Sysmon addition, QRadar will be able to pick this up. So in here, in the offenses view with the new UI, if we refresh that one, we should see at least one offense. And here it is. That's the desktop. Detected PowerShell usage. So if I'm investigating this from the QRadar standpoint, where I have limited visibility because all I got really was the Sysmon logs. I did not see what the actual email going and all that. But for me, if I look at the rules that contributed to this attack, I can easily see, by just reading this, anyone can actually see and say, well, this machine definitely has been compromised. So let's say that I want somebody to investigate and do resolution to this particular incident. So I can actually go here and click send to Resilient, and that uses that integration app that we have, the traditional one that we have with QRadar and Resilient. But now this instead, please read this as sent to, because in this particular case it's going to be to CloudPack. And if you're not familiar with the new QRadar UI, we can actually go here to the standard offenses view and basically do exactly the same. So I can take it in here and click here, send to Resilient. The template is a compromised host, and now that is gone there. So I'm here in the browser view of my instance of CloudPack for security. And this platform right now only has 3 components: Data Explorer for doing searches, we are going to use that. Case management, we use it as well to manage the actual case that we just sent here to be resolved, and threat intelligence. But you expect to see more and more platforms being added, components being added to this platform. So when we click into case management, we should see that a case has been opened with that offense that we sent here for investigation. Sure enough, it is here. So now this investigator is going to put the things together, because, you know, from the information in that QRadar saw, I mean, looks like this guy the machine has compromised, but did he put a USB key with a malicious content? Did he click on a URL and get infected? Did he get a piece of email and that was the vector? Who did it? Which country is coming? All those questions, you cannot answer those with just the information that was in the offense. But we'll see how the purpose of CloudPack for security is to enable the investigator to put all those pieces together that we saw in the whole attack. So we click on the actual incident. Let's actually go into the artifact and see what is it that QRadar extracted from the offense. So he went there and extracted all the logs and all the pieces, not just what we saw in the offense, but it retrieved all this nice information. And here we got a good picture. Say, well, there's an email address in here. This is executable. My log.exe is executable. It was run through PowerShell. These IP addresses are recognized as the IP address of the local machine, but this one I do not know. I don't know where this IP actually came from. So by looking at this, I may run into the suspicions of, say, well, you know, this looks like this guy got phished via email. I think the emails is the vector, but I need to prove that and to figure out who sent it from where and all that. So if we click here on these actions, on these 3 dots, we can simply use that integration server that I mentioned to you in the beginning and say, go ahead to Office 365, which in here is labeled Exchange Online, and we're going to query that mail server. again, QRadar doesn't have visibility in it. QRadar may get logs about what happened in there, but it doesn't get the visibility that you'll see here. And I'm going to make a very simple question. You can say, well, give me send an email. I don't know who sent it, so I don't have anything to put here. I don't even know the subject of the actual phishing email, if it's phishing, because I don't even know at this point. But what I can easily do is make a query to that Exchange, or Office 365, Exchange Online, and say, bring me for this user, jose@mutas9.com, all the emails that have an attachment. And I click here, execute, so the integration server goes boom into that mail server and retrieves any mail that has those characteristics. It's been sent to this guy and has attachments, and you know, within a short period of time. Let's actually see what we got out of that by going here into the details. And let me sort this by date, because I've been doing some testing of this thing, so I want to make sure that today is August 28. I want to make sure I get the very latest one, and this is the one from the 28th, and this is the catchy subject, and this is the message ID on the mail server. So this is actually pretty good. So notice that I already know who sent this. That's the Gmail account that I use. Okay, I know the subject, so I kind of know what type of campaign it is. So this really seems to indicate that this guy has been phished, but I need further proof. I need to put all the things together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click here on the actions, and I'm going to say, go ahead and retrieve the entire email's message, the piece of email that was sent, and bring it and add it into the case that I'm investigating. So give me more components to it. And in fact, by just doing that, if we go here under attachment, we actually see the actual piece of email. Let me actually download that. By just clicking in here, I have downloaded the piece of email. And if I go into my downloads directory, sure enough, I have it in here. In fact, what I'm going to do is actually not what an investigator do, but just to prove you that I did this. I'm going to double click in it, and my mail client in my Mac here is going to look at the email, and this is what we actually sent as a subject, a piece of email. And of course, nobody should click on this, otherwise the investigator will get compromised. But you get the point. I mean, what I'm showing is he can actually take this attachment and detonate it into a safe zone to investigate how the malware works, etc. So I got that attachment, but not only this, but also that attachment and all this content has been parsed by Cloud Pak for Security, or CP4S, and additional artifacts has been added. Notice that we got, you know, that's again the file name, but we get the subject. That email, it's confirmation that that's what we were suspecting. This is the sender email. What is this? I don't recognize this. Oh, that's the Google, that's the Gmail account where this was actually sent. So this makes sense. So these things is beginning to come apart. Rather come apart, actually come together. So let's say that, you know, this IP that I saw before that sounds kind of suspicious. What I want to do now is I want to search anyone in my company, not just QRadar alone, that instead of Splunk that I have, in which the DevOps people send some logs that QRadar does not see. Any kind of more on that on the connectors later. But I want everywhere I can to give me all the information that they have about this particular IP. And the way I do that is, again, I click on these dots, scroll to the bottom and say runs a query into Data Explorer. That's one of the 3 components that we show on the actual platform. And here we are in that platform. And let me explain this in a second. But basically, what I'm doing is that notice that it already took this and made it, you know, this looks like an IP address. And I say, yes, it is an IP address. And when I click here, the next option is start when I want this. let's go the last 30 minutes. We can go 15 minutes. And here I need to specify where do I want to search. Oh, I have some AWS logs. So yeah, let me see if there's anything in AWS. Let me see if there's something in my QRadar system, in Mutas QRadar's machine, in my Splunk data. And you know, in your corporation will have more components than this, but anyone who knows anything about that IP, please come back to me and tell me that. And while this query runs, this is a stick query. I don't have to know anything about the syntax of stick because the tool actually, if I put a URL, it's going to put it as a URL. If I put a host name, it's going to put a host name. So it automatically finds out what is it that I need to do and executes the query. And here are the results. So we got 15 findings. We can see them here with all the richness of the data. Notice that there are some networking details. So it's a bunch of information about it. Let's actually analyze this piece by piece. And because those 15 things might be way too much for me to see, you can actually do some filtering. And you have multiple categories in here and do the filtering. So let me see what is in clear port 80 and see, because you saw that attack that we did was in the clear text. So we see 3 entries. That's the first one. That's the second one, a bunch of networking information and detail about it. Let's scroll down and see what we can actually see. And here's a clear confirmation that the guy that executed, when he opened that PowerShell thing, executed a get command to download that mylove64.exe. It was obviously saved as, when we saw that it was saved as mylove without a 64K. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. It definitely came from this IP, but who are this guy? I don't know. I don't recognize that IP. Well, the good thing is that this platform has already a very good. I'm just showing the basics of it. But it has threat intelligence capability. So by just clicking on that triangle, this actually comes back and tell me, well, you know, that's a service provider in Germany. The name of the company is Contabo. And again, I know the guy who sent the email. I know where the bad guy put his tool. So a lot of good information in here. I mean, he might be, I don't know whether he came from South Korea, China, or whatever he came, but he rented some space in this ISP provider, in this service provider in Germany. So okay. So by now we have been able to reproduce a bunch of things that we didn't have the visibility within QRadar. I mean, the capabilities of CP4S, you've seen some of it, and this is just one basic example, but it had given SOAR capabilities to my SIM for what? For investigation and for resolution. Well, we haven't done any resolution. Let's actually do some of that. I'll show you some of the things that we could do on that. So here on the tool, what are the kind of actions that I would like to make out of this? Let's actually go back to case management and go back to the case that we were actually looking at. And some of the remediation actions that you may say, well, I'm gonna, for example, from here, I'm gonna reset the guy's credentials. I'm gonna send the information to my, whatever is my identity management system, to reset his password, because I'm going to assume that he has been compromised. I can send the instructions. I can open a ticket for having his machine re-image. I mean, there are a multitude of actions that I can see. I can actually, for example, see who else was copied in that particular email, and then investigate if any one of those that were copied. I also click on the attachment, and if so, well, the machine gets re-imaged, the password get compromised, and you can execute any one of those actions. And to show you how you will do that, let's actually go back again and sort this by date. Okay, here is that's the actual piece of email. Some of the things that I can also want to do, and this is just to show an example of the possible thing, is that, I mean, that email, I don't want it in my mail server, so I want to actually delete it. So let's actually bring the Outlook client in here back, that piece of email is still there, but we can actually from here say go ahead and take that thing out of my mail server. And by just doing that, if we go here, boom, you see that email is actually gone. Again, this is an example of the many remediation things. So in short, this tool has enabled us not only to investigate and put the pieces together, given the feasibility that I have wasn't complete, but also allows me to automate and put the workflow of the remediation actions that I consider to be done for this particular case. So I hope that this helps you answer the question, why do I need something like a CP4S if I already have QRadar? And as basic as this example is, understand that there, as I mentioned at the beginning, there will be additional components other than these three that we see in here. And also, right now, that data explorer that we saw making that search into all my system, you can actually, these are the ones that I have connected in my, but if I click in here, you see some of the options that exist right now, and you can expect that these are going to be increasing over time in order to be able to query multiple sources of information. Again, it's not only enhances my capability of investigating the event, and also help me with the workflow and the automation that I need to execute to do the complete resolution and documentation of the action taken to successfully and completely close that incident.